Welcome to the Episcopal Creation Care Gathering Network Deep Dive. Today is June 11th. I'm Brian Sellers Peterson, and I just have the immense pleasure of introducing my friend and colleague, Derrick Weston, who is the Theological Education and Formation Director with Creation Justice Ministries. Now, CJM, as it is known, represents a number of mostly mainline denominations as well as Orthodox churches. And they used to, up until just recently, be a part of the National Council of Churches of Christ, but they are now fully incorporated as a separate 501c3. And I personally have the distinct pleasure of working alongside them as a coach with their transformational leadership program. And you can find out more information about all the great things that they do on their website, which will go in to the chat box. But Derrick, he comes to us with a wonderful background in creation care ministries. He is a noted storyteller, videographer, podcaster, just a multimedia talent. And again, we'll be putting lots of really great links in the chat so you can really benefit from all the wealth of knowledge that he has. So I'm turning it over to Derrick. And I'm really glad that this is an evergreen in more ways than one because this is being recorded. And so, those of you who are live, please share this when you get the link. And those of you who are finding us online, share this recording lively because it's going to be wonderful. Derrick, all yours, buddy.
Thanks, Brian. It's great to be with you all tonight. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for allowing me to share a little bit of some of the work that I've been doing this year at Creation Justice Ministries. As Brian said, my name is Derrick Weston. I'm the Director of Theological Education and Formation at Creation. For our organization, every year we have annual resource. It used to be called our Earth Day resource, but I really want people to use it beyond Earth Day. Now that we are past April, I don't want people to just move on from using some of these resources that we create. So we've begun referring to these as our annual resource. And so I'm going to do a short presentation on this year's annual resource. Because we have a kind of small group here, I think that's going to be really good for us to have some conversation. I'm already excited because so many of you have talked about what you are doing around trees. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. And so this is, here we go. This is this year's annual resource, the Canopy of Creation, Trees, Faith, and the Work of Justice. So, what's going on in the world? The question might be, why trees? Why, of all the things to discuss, why talk about trees? One of the really important things that we wanted to talk about is trees are sort of an on-ramp to talking about some of the harder issues that are going on in the world right now. Everyone loves trees. A lot of environmental justice groups, we all just kind of have a natural affinity for trees. We kind of find ourselves drawn to them. We try to find ourselves drawn to wooded places. But in the midst of that is a justice issue, which is that a correlation between redlining maps and tree canopy. Redlining, for those of us, those who may not know, was a practice that happened it happened readily, most actively in the post-World War II area, where lines were drawn across maps that separated communities, largely along racial lines, which then restricted access to things like education, housing, bank loans, all those sorts of things. And one of the things that is not discussed very often is that when those redlining maps were made, what was also redlined was tree canopy. So in lower income areas across the country, you will find on average about 26% less tree cover than in wealthier areas. And those areas are on average 6 degrees warmer. And those numbers jump to 38% less tree cover and 13% warmer for communities of color. So when you start to factor in race, you're starting to see a huge disparity of tree canopy, tree cover, and understanding the heat differentials. So as a Brian and I've had this conversation before. As someone who's done some work in South Africa, I know that we've had some pretty good conversations about the term food apartheid, in terms of understanding the human created systems that keep food out of some folks' hands and um, good food in the hands of others. We kind of adopted that there is also a tree apartheid, that there is a human created system that has enabled tree access for some, and prohibited tree access for others. Um, so let's talk about the benefits of trees. Some of this is going to be obvious, and some of this you already really well know really well. But let's talk about the benefits of trees. It reduces stormwater runoff. Rainwater that runs off roofs, trees, lawns, can pick up the pollutants that flow into our lakes, provides wildlife habitat. So many creatures live in trees. I just moved into a new house in Pittsburgh. Actually, it's an old house in Pittsburgh, built in the 1920s. And we've got great tree cover in my new backyard. And my goodness, the critters that have come to visit me in just in the last week, raccoons, squirrels, all sorts of things, all kinds of birds, thousands of species of insects all make trees their home, provide us with oxygen. Trees are often referred to as the lungs of the planet. On a very kind of surface level, but not unimportant, is the fact that they increase property values. When you find houses that are in more tree-lined areas, they tend to have higher property value. Improves air quality. It's one of the best pieces of infrastructure we have to fight climate change are trees. Creates the foundation for new life. Tree leaves fall to the ground and begin to create the topsoil and the forest floors that give home for new creatures. Improves public health. We found that just in general, public health outcomes are better when people live around trees. And that includes mental health, right? That like there is something relaxing, there's something calming around being around trees. They buffer noise, they provide shade, they absorb CO2, they reduce erosion, they improve water quality. Like trees are amazing. They're kind of these miracles of creation that do all of these amazing things. And I want to go back just a second of what I was saying about heat, and the fact that tree cover reduces heat, particularly in a lot of urban areas that are lacking in tree cover are noticing the increase in heat. Heat is the number one killer during the summers. Heat related diseases, heat related illnesses, heat is the number one cause of death. And so when you talk about not having tree cover, yes, there's the aesthetics of it. but we're also talking about the fact that lives are being lost in certain parts of our neighborhoods and our cities because of lack of tree cover, because there's so many heat-related deaths that happen each year. So one of the things that we needed to do as an organization is create a theological framing. We always kind of do this with any issue that we're talking about. We want to talk. We want to start with, what is Scripture saying to us about this issue? Um, and one of the things that we discovered, not surprising, but we were kind of delighted to find this out, is that other than humans, trees are the element of creation that are spoken of most in Scripture, in the New and Old Testament. Trees are everywhere across the Bible. And so the idea that wherever humans are, trees are there coexisting, and that's pretty remarkable, right? That trees kind of co-inhabit all of the places where humans are. That God kind of intentionally put us in community with trees. And we have this passage from Genesis 2, verse 9: out of the ground the Lord God made to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food, the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And one of the things that Genesis 2 is actually kind of making the point, is that the trees emerge out of the Adamah, the ground, which is also where Adam, the human, comes from. Um, so trees and humans, there's almost this intimation in the Scripture that there's a a familial relationship, a kinship between trees and humans, and I think that's pretty amazing. And another thing that I think, just as we're thinking about this theological framing, and this, I don't know why, but this has caught my attention as I was working on writing this theological framing, is that before God notes that trees are good for food, God notes that trees are pleasant to the sight. And so God cares about things like the aesthetics that trees add to our life. God cares about things like beauty. Cares about things like the joy and the relaxation, the things that feel softer or maybe less substantial. God cares about those things, because God made trees, yes, for food, but also made them to be pleasant to the sight. That there would be this kind of like magnetism that we feel for trees, kind of built into the creation story, and I just absolutely love this. And then we have these two very specific, the tree of life, which is kind of giving birth to all that is, and sustaining life in the garden. And then the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which gives humans limitations. This is the one thing that God says is off limits. And trees kind of give us, this tree kind of served as, here's our limitation. Don't go beyond this boundary. Of course, being who we are as humans, we transgress the boundary. Um, a piece that I think is really important is, one of the things that comes up in Acts repeatedly as Peter is telling the story of Jesus's life, ministry, death, and resurrection. Peter repeatedly used the phrase that Christ was hung on a tree. And so we talked about all of the beautiful things that trees do. Peter, of course, had access to the language of the cross, but he uses this language of being hung on a tree, which kind of takes our minds back, or would have taken the minds back of the original readers, to the laws that show up in Deuteronomy, that anyone who's hung from a tree is cursed. And so we think about the ways that trees are sometimes, oftentimes, unwitting participants, unwilling, gosh, what am I trying to say here? That they're unwitting participants in the evils that humanity against creation and against each other. Brought to mind The Cross and the Lynching Tree, written by James Cone, sort of the father of Black liberation, and just the idea that while there are all these beautiful things about trees, here in this country we also have this pretty ugly history about things that were of people that were things that were done to people with trees. And in this we reference the beautiful song that Billie Holiday sings called "Strange Fruit," about the idea of lynchings in the South. And so thinking about how this source of life, this source of oxygen and protection and security, and have also been dragged into some of the ugliness of humanity. And so as we think about the ways in which trees coexist with us, yes, they've been witness for all of the good things that happen, but they've also been front row seat to a lot of the evils of humanity. But the other thing that is beautiful about trees, and particularly the way they show up in scripture, is that they bookend the whole narrative. The tree of life is at the beginning, and the tree of life is at the end. And that ultimately, this narrative of scripture is in some ways this beautiful narrative of God, humans, and creation as represented by trees, all kind of being together. And in this beautiful final image of the city of God descending from heaven, that God, humanity, and creation, again here represented by trees, are living in this sort of harmonious community together, and that's the goal. And it's kind of this beautiful, it's not is reduced back to a forest. It's the nation that humanity has learned to live in harmony with creation. That the city of God descends, and humans have learned to live in harmony. We have a harmonious relationship with the creation that's around us. And I just kind of love that beautiful image. And that the trees are for the healing of the nation. And when we think about where we are in this climate changed world, again, we're kind of recognizing that trees are one of the number one ways that we can be mitigating the CO2 that is in the air, which has become for our healing as well. The trees are for our healing here and now, can be for the healing of the nations in some really practical ways as we think about the benefits of trees. So we shared some stories in our resource. There's this urban farm tree cycle program in Nashville that is bringing young people together with members of the churches to go plant trees, to get outside, to get their hands in the dirt, to be a part of reforesting, to be a part of learning about creation with these very hands-on tree planting initiatives. And there's this wonderful thing that's happening in the Mennonite church, Mennonite men's groups that are doing this goal of 1 million trees being planted over the course of 10 years. And so that's something that they are actively in the middle of trying to see 1 million trees planted in a 10-year span. And so these are two very quick snapshots of some of the ministry that is happening around trees. That like this is one of the things that even as we're doing some work this summer of getting tree planting projects going around the country, this is one of the things that gets like young and old. It crosses racial barriers. It crosses socioeconomic barriers to get people outside to plant trees. It gets people together, it gets people talking, it builds community, and it does good things for the community. It does good things for the neighborhood. It does good things for the ecosystem. So we are putting a lot of energy into some tr- some urban tree planting programs that are happening in various parts of the city, and it's just great to see like all of the churches that are really being energized by opportunities to get out there and plant some trees. One of the other pieces that is incredibly important to CJM and our identity is advocacy. Um, and we want to always encourage people to think about how they can be a part of what's going on in their community. So there are some things that can be really helpful. The American Forest Tree Equity Score, you can go to treeequityscore.org to learn about where are the places where tree canopy is lacking. Again, oftentimes this overlaps with maps of redlining, maps where uh, disenfranchised communities are located. Oftentimes, tree cover is an indicator, or lack of tree cover is an indicator of where those lines are in a lot of our communities. And so, being able to map those things is really important to help know where we can have real impact. Um, we want to encourage people to like go to your municipality and map these things out. Help people see where are the tree gaps, where are these things, where are the places where a good tree planting campaign could be of real benefit, and helping your municipality to map them, because they're gonna have resources that a church may not have access to on its own. So and then figuring out, one of the things that we are really big about as an organization is it's great where the church can lead, but sometimes the best things we can do as people of faith who care about creation issues is to walk alongside the folks who are already doing the work. So thinking about what are out there that we can walk alongside and be partners with. And so identify the community players and let them know we want to be an ally with them. We want to be in communion with them as they're doing the good work of caring for God's creation. And of course, writing letters to Congress. I know that right now, uh, writing letters to Congress right now probably feels like shouting into the wind. Um, but enough, um, there actually is bipartisan support around caring for trees in this country. It doesn't always get spoken very loudly, but there are a lot of folks in various parts of this country who care deeply about our forests, and that transcends the typical partisan divides. So you might be surprised where um, reaching out to a member of Congress can actually have an impact on caring for local canopy, but also as we think about the forests that are in our national parks and the protected forests that are under threat from logging and mining, that being able to voice, that we want to protect those spaces um, that right now feel like they've got a bullseye on them. Um, that can have an impact if we're willing to speak together um, in a loud, concentrated way. And then, of course, worship resources. One of the things that we have found as an organization, and we now have like really solid research to back this up, is that the churches that are most active in doing creation care work are the ones who are hearing about it from the pulpit. So we have a couple of sermon starter ideas. One is Ezekiel, which is sort of that the parallel passage to the passage from Revelation, um, of an image that Ezekiel has of the sort of utopian image of the tree of life, with trees on either side. That again is about the healing of humanity, and about the healing and God's presence, God's healing presence, present in creation, present among humanity. And Acts chapter 10, which once again kind of echoes the sentiment, another space where Peter echoes the sentiment that Jesus was hung on a tree, which then we think about what Paul says in Deuteronomy, or what Paul says in Galatians, referencing Deuteronomy. This idea that there's a curse that comes with anyone who's hung on a tree. And what does it mean for us to use God's good creation to curse others, and to be a part of the evil that happens in humanity? So, sort of challenging that through preaching could be a really, really powerful thing. And of course, worship resources. There's so many scriptural references to trees that can give us good liturgy for and good prayers, calls to worship, and things like that nature. And these are just a couple of examples that we found, but there are beautiful. There's beautiful tree language out there for our liturgical worship resources. And there's a couple of great songs out there. Again, these are scratching the surface on the fact that there are hymns that speak to the beauty of trees and the goodness of trees. That trees as a metaphor for our being rooted, our being grounded is present in scripture and present in a lot of our liturgical resources. So again, kind of bringing this idea of thinking about and caring for trees into our worship. And finally, in the back of the resource, we have a children's resource, because again, this is one of those things that can be such a great intergenerational conversation. You can talk about the importance of trees. And when you talk to kids about the importance of trees, they become lifelong lovers of trees. And they oftentimes are the ones who kind of get their parents mobilized, and get their parents thinking differently about why are we doing some of the things that we do. So and this diagram of the benefits of trees feels like that can be used for any age, any age group. And there's so many great resources about trees that are out there. So, and then finally, last but not least, if you are using this resource with whether it's your green team or an adult ed class or some sort of small group, we've created a discussion guide for you to use this with your community, so you can have good conversations and thinking about what might be the way that your church is uniquely positioned to think about how do they engage in the work of trees, and caring for God's creation through trees. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to go ahead and open the floor for some conversation with you all. I'd love to hear, what are the tree projects that are happening in your atmosphere that are getting people excited, that are getting people out into their communities? Like, what are you seeing that's getting people animated around these issues around trees? Anything that comes to mind for any of you all?
Can I say something?
Please.
Yes, I was so fascinated. Thank you very much, Derrick, for these insights. I want to take you on two journeys. One was, you might have heard of West Africa. Uh, there's a very massive tree we call the
Mm,
Iroko tree, Iroko, Iroko. We find it also in the Portuguese. The Portuguese and the French people also pronounce it the same way, Iroko,
mm,
Iroko tree. It lives for it can live almost over 500 years,
mm,
and it's so massive, so huge. But my take there is that when I was in college back home in West Africa, in Nigeria, and whenever we are coming back from school, we see that tree. It's like so spiritual. People don't
mm,
go near it. People don't. It's so venerated, and
mm,
it's so venerated. It's used for healing. It has its own priests. It's so huge. It's like a 30-story building.
mm,
So massive, you know. And if somebody tries to cut it down or have a look directly on the priest who, venerates and worship this Iroko tree, that person dies instantly.
mm,
So you can see the spiritual value or power but what struck me there is that in the Basilica of Peace, Our Lady of Peace Basilica in France, and also in the Catholic Church, one of the biggest basilica in Ivory Coast, Cote d'Ivoire. It was built, dedicated by Pope John Paul. That same tree, Iroko tree, was used, for all the
mm,
pews in the whole of the cathedral. And it's one of the tallest buildings, you know. So, and I kind of, it's so fascinating that the beauty of this tree has both theological, spiritual, and in West Africa, it's so revered, it's so honored. It's like, I don't even know. It's like another god, small on his own,
mm,
you know. So that's what I'll just observe about, you
mm,
know, the deepness and the sacredness, of this tree. But
mm,
why, it has such a massive power that, the other aspect of it where it can destroy anybody that tries to, cut it down, or anybody that tries to even, look at the priests that normally pour libations and worship the tree. That is the fact. That is the only aspect there. And we were not given much insight. Even when I was in the seminary, they said, well, you have to go and consult the traditional rulers if you want to go deeper into, the other details of this Iroko tree. So
mm.
that's just what the only take I want to just, contribute to that.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. And one of the other pieces that kind of comes up in our theological reflection is that every a lot of cultures have some version of a tree of life. That there is something universal about the idea that life emerges from a tree. That a tree is the central grid life-giving thing, and that is a universal concept. There's a practically universal concept that everyone has this veneration, some tree that they have found that God, that draws their attention to its beauty, but also its strength. and its stability, and it's just one of those things that just kind of echoes throughout the centuries, throughout the cultures, that we've all kind of found trees to have this kind of incredible property that you're talking about with these Uroku trees. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Any other love to hear more about tree projects that are happening in your churches, or that you might know that are happening in your diocese. Other tree work that you see that is happening in your communities that you've found compelling. That is, as you're thinking about how you uh, how you do ministry around these ideas. How do you where is this showing up for you? Where are trees showing up for you in your ministries?
Just a quick piggyback on Christopher. He brought to mind the church forests in Ethiopia,
Mm,
and I'll put a link in the chat. Just just how amazing those are, and how they have sustained life throughout that country for centuries, and it also, you know, um, thinking about creating forest experiences is something that we're doing in our little church, which is surrounded by, state, um, federal, national forests. So we've got plenty of trees that we just take for granted. And I think one of the things we're looking at is putting in a Miyawaki type of forest, a
mm,
microforest on our church property, just as an educational place that we're looking at doing with. We have an outdoor school, a preschool that uses our property, but
mm,
really, providing trees to kind of a classroom for the kids in the preschool.
mm. That's great. Thank you so much for that, Brian. And Chris, I'm seeing your comment here in the chat. The I think giving away maple trees to parishioners and collecting black walnuts.
Mm.
I think that's such a um, beautiful thing to just encourage people um, to think about how they can get involved in this kind of work. Um, Other things I should note so I put the link for uh, the resource. Go to creationjustice.org/canopy of creation. You can download the resource. But other thing that you will find on that site is a pretty extensive um, tree planting guide, of thinking about if you're going to be engaging in this kind because one of the things that I think is really important is thinking about um, you know, tree planting is great, but we also want to make sure that we're planting the right trees in the right places. That we're planting trees that are native, that are going to contribute to the ecosystem. We're planting trees that are going to be beneficial to the ecosystems that are surrounding. That we're not just planting the trees that we like, but we're planting the trees that the um, community needs. Um, Chris is asking what my favorite tree is. Uh, Current favorite tree is the pin oak that is in my new backyard. That I have been sitting under for about a week now. When the weather permits. Um, and it's one of these things that is such a beautiful illustration of what tree cover can do, because when I walk from the back of my house to the front of my house, the drop in temperature from underneath this shaded in my backyard to the area in the front yard is tremendous. It is a significant um, drop in temperature. It is a significant increase in comfort level to have this pin oak, which has clearly seen a lot of things, which clearly has been around, and it is beautiful. It is also one of these trees that I am learning it hasn't been pruned very much, but we're beginning to prune it, and so it's also providing this uh, uh, you know great firewood for our so we can just kind of enjoy the evening. So I'm kind of I'm beginning to form a relationship with this tree in my backyard, and it's been fun to kind of get to know it. Um, Fun to watch my dog chase squirrels up it, and basically hold vigil at the base, sometimes for hours, as it watches the squirrels scamper back and forth across the tree the tree canopy.
The U.S. Forestry Service has a lot of information talking about urban forests,
Mm, mhm,
um, and different ways to plant. I mean, they're saying that instead of spreading out the trees, if you're planting 3 or 4 of them, instead of spreading them out um, for future growth, they're saying actually cluster them, because as you
mm,
cluster them, it actually strengthens them and encourage them to grow much faster, because they have to
mm.
compete with each other to get sunlight, so they'll grow quicker. But also because they're in a closer proximity, when the huge storms come through, they are much stronger when they're supported by other trees than an individual tree spread out over a distance. So there's a lot of work going on that way as we begin looking at better ways to plant the trees um, to prepare for the weather that we're currently having.
Yeah.
As I mentioned earlier, one of the things that we did is we applied for a grant through Faith in Place. It's from the U.S. Forestry
Mm,
Service. Um, it's a $30,000 grant to put trees in the community, um, in low socioeconomic areas and also areas with limited shade cover.
mm.
Um, so, and it's to plant the trees, but also then to maintain them for a 3-year period of time. Um,
Yeah.
so unfortunately, this is the last go around for those grants. They've been going for several years, but it does bring to mind um, the ability to make a difference in some of the shade and canopy cover within the community. I mean, we're focusing ours on city parks.
Mm.
I mean, we have a city park which is probably 2 normal city blocks square. There are 2 trees in the entire park.
Wow.
Um,
Wow.
so the park is non-usable. And when we look at people that are renting, landlords typically don't want trees. Um, Many of those homes in low income areas do not have air conditioning. We have no air conditioning. You have no shade in your property. So how are you going to avoid the heat? And when the
Yeah.
parks around you don't have trees, I mean, you don't even have a community place to go to. So our goal is to add those shade cover within those parks to make sure that people have a place that they can go to be outdoors, but to get the benefit of the shade and being under canopy. Um,
Yeah.
so we have a couple other local groups. The League of Women Voters Sustainability Committee just planted their 20th tree in the community this last week. So they have some more coming. So again, they're looking at um, putting trees onto nonprofit organizations' properties,
Mm.
again, for that same purpose. Um,
Yeah.
so, and as they get planted and things happen, people get more excited. People get more interested about how do we get a tree? How can we get one put in? What do I have to do, and so on. So you're getting more interest in adding some trees and some tree cover. So, um,
Yeah. That's great. That's great.
I'm
And oh, go ahead, please.
I I stepped outside. I wanted y'all to see my backyard, and I'm having trouble not it's blurred because I got trees, lots and lots of trees in my
Hmm.
backyard. And we bought the house. One of the main reasons was because of the trees, but trees just appear. I don't plant them. It is turning into a forest, and I'm always amazed at the trees that come. They just really like it here. However, I do have a problem. There's a little creek behind us, and on the other side of that creek, it's a floodplain.
Mm.
And the city, oh, by the way, I'm in Lexington, Kentucky. Um, but on the other side of that creek, they replaced the sewer and took out everything. And when they put it back, there's about half an inch of dirt on top of rocks and crap they left behind.
Mm.
And I have been trying to plant trees back there. I've had some success, but my neighbors are in the same boat. But wondered if you all had any suggestions how we might be more successful without having truckloads of dirt.
Mm.
Or are there certain trees that would grow?
I mean, not even thinking about the kinds of trees there. I do wonder if that's a municipal issue. I'm wondering if that's something where you need to get government involved there, because that sounds like a big project. Not just a couple trees there. That sounds like something that a really good organized community could have a pretty good impact
Yeah, you're probably right.
on. And maybe that's just you and a few neighbors.
I'm sorry.
I said maybe that's just you and a few neighbors who really care
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah, probably. Probably some people just they also planted some kind of horrible grass that's almost
Yeah.
impossible to get up. But, some of my neighbors just mow it and keep going. And anyway, I'm trying to plant some trees. And like I
Yeah.
said, I get bags of dirt and dig a hole and but on the hill behind my house, there's tons and tons of trees of all different kinds, including pin oak, by the way. They just come up
Yeah.
like little pin oaks and then they grow, come from nothing and they grow into huge trees. It's just amazing.
Mm. Yeah.
So, thank you.
Mhm. Well, it looks like we are close to time, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I do appreciate getting that opportunity to share a little bit of the work that we're doing. Again, you can find the resource that we created, Canopy of Creation. You just go to www.creationjustice.org/canopy of creation. You can download the resource for free. And if you're interested in print copies, you can order those. But I'm really grateful that I had the opportunity to share a little bit of this work. We have had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun putting it together. We had a lot of fun sharing with about it, and just really grateful that there are folks out there who have been that this has been resonating with people, because I think that in a time when it feels like there are so many uphill battles um, that we're fighting on a lot of different fronts, that being able to like get out, get our hands in the dirt, put a tree in the ground and know that it has sort of this outsized benefit for ourselves and for the world just feels like a sign of hope. So thank you all for your time and for your attention this evening. I appreciate it.
Thank you.